Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final Thinking About DFS of the season. The divisional round of the NFL playoffs are here. We've got a nice 4-game slate. Some of these teams, theoretically, should be interested in scoring points, which is nice. And let's find a way to build some shippers. It's Short King Summer, dude. It just feels like no one in fantasy sports ever learns anything. Does he mistime it, or is Brock Bowers just a grown man? Brock Bowers is just a grown man. Dare I say, Rich, football might be back. In the words of Lane Johnson, this offense looks constipated. It's Short King Summer. All right, Jacob. Fantasy football is winding its way to the end. We have 7 more games for this week, 2 next week, and then the Super Bowl. I hope your FFPC teams are doing well. I hope you have a shipper in the gauntlet that you haven't found yet. Really wish Sam Darnold would have not seen so many ghosts against the Rams, to be honest. That would have been very nice for me last week. My God, man. How much money did Sam Darnold cost himself in those 4 quarters? It's sort of unbelievable.
I actually think not that much. If anything, I actually think he made himself money because I think that he would have been tagged by the Minnesota Vikings if he went on a great playoff run. Now I think that is significantly less likely. And I've always felt that the only way he ends up in Minnesota is if he's tagged, because I think if we allow the free market to work, then Minnesota is just less incentivized to give him as much money as other teams are. They have a reasonable alternative with JJ McCarthy. The Raiders don't. The Giants don't. Other teams are way more incentivized to give him way too much money. So to me, I think he played himself off the tag, and it was a sharp move by him. I didn't factor in that motivation when I was drafting my gauntlet teams, because had I really thought this through, maybe I would have realized Sam Darnold actually needed to embarrass himself heavily on national TV in order to make himself an extra, I don't know, probably $20-30 million guaranteed. I think that was the best thing he could have done.
Yeah, I got a direct message from Corain last
Sam
night.
Darnold?
From Corain that said doing his initial best ball rankings, he could only get to 30 quarterbacks. A couple teams are, and I quote, totally fucked, like Daniel Jones level fucked, which basically means Sam Darnold's going to get the bag from somebody who does not have an alternative.
The bag. I mean, if you just think about it, there's, again, I'm not the one who makes declarations really of how many viable quarterbacks there are in a draft. That's not for me to say, but the people for whom it is to say have seemingly said, they've said that there are 2. There are 2.
There's 2.5. Someone's going to talk themselves into Jackson Dart, but
we'll see. I mean, the fantasy community, I think, seems to be higher so far at Jackson Dart
than
the NFL community.
Not me. I won't be fooled again.
But so it seems like there's going to be 2 that are going to be round 1 picks that are going to go very highly, Sanders and Ward. And Titans are for sure taking 1. One of the Browns and Giants then is not getting 1. Vegas isn't getting 1. I noted on Twitter that the Colts announced that they're going to be playing in Berlin.
No Anthony Richardson,
and who is front and center in the graphic. It's an offensive guard, which says a lot about the Colts last several years. But Taylor's on the graphic, Buckner's on the graphic, Anthony Richardson not on the graphic. So that's notable.
Is Sam Darnold going to be on that graphic? Shane Steichen and Sam Darnold. I can fix him. Shane Steichen can fix him, man.
Yes. I mean, point is, I think there's going to be multiple teams that are not the Vikings that are going to be willing to offer this guy a decent contract, which means we're going to get a bidding war situation. So if you are holding Sam Darnold in Dynasty, I think you hold the line on that.
Yeah, I think that is true as well. All right, let's get into it. First game, the Saturday early afternoon game. The Houston Texans travel to play at the Kansas City Chiefs. They are huge underdogs in this game. And in fact, the line has even moved against them from open. 16.5-point team total for the Texans, 25-point team total for the Chiefs. Before I even say anything about the Chiefs, some might argue I'm a little bit too close to the situation. What do you think the Kansas City Chiefs do on offense in this game?
Man, I think that they're going to I think that they found late in the year that now that they actually have some real weapons, that they don't need to run the ball. They can't run the ball really. Kareem Hunt is old and very slow, has no explosive ability. Isaiah Pacheco was clearly not 100% late in the year. Maybe he is now after the 2 weeks
21 days of rest for the relevant Kansas City Chiefs players.
Yeah, so I would say like I am mildly intrigued by taking a shot on Andy Reid lying, and actually Isaiah Pacheco is now a lot healthier than he was in the regular season. He's going to look better, and so maybe that's where the running game goes. I have like some equity in that narrative, but I think the most likely thing that they do is what they were doing late in the season, which is they're effectively going to use Xavier Worthy as their running game. He's going to get 8 to 10 kind of designed short area targets. And then Travis Kelce has always been kind of an extension of the running game as well. He gets a lot of those short intermediate targets. And then they use Hopkins and Hollywood Brown as like their actual intermediate passing game and maybe a couple shot plays to Justin Watson. So I think that like the high PROE Chiefs are kind of back, where they're just going to be doing a lot of short passing, moving the chains that way, not really wasting all that much time with running the ball for 3 yards, which I think is sharp. I think that's the best version of the Chiefs. How Mahomes can play that way. We'll see. I will say, I think that like you follow the minutia of the Chiefs offensive line shuffles more than
they fixed it.
My understanding is that like
they fixed it.
Horrible because they didn't have a left tackle, but then they put Joe Tooney at left tackle, and that kind of solved the thing.
Turns out all pro center, all pro left guard, also an all pro left tackle. And the way I understand offensive line play is tackle is the hardest one to play.
Yeah.
And then the center is the next most difficult, and guard is still difficult. But based on what I've done, what I understand, they basically just said, well, why don't we try Tooney? And I believe he is not allowed a pressure since they moved him there. And the thing is, though, is they might put this guy DJ Humphries back in. He was the guy they signed, the free agent they signed. They might try that. They might rotate them some. But basically, I'm no longer concerned about the offensive line play. That seems to have alleviated itself. This is the usage since Hollywood Brown came back. 26% targets per route run for Worthy on a 20% target share. 17% targets per route run for Hopkins on a 10% target share. 44% targets per route run on 40% of the team's routes for Hollywood Brown. If Hollywood is able to scale up to 70% of the routes for a playoff game, and they might save it for next week. They might even not do this week because it will be unnecessary. I think Hollywood Worthy has the highest ceiling of any of the wide receivers, but Hollywood probably has the highest targets per route run ceiling. Watson obviously stands the most to lose from Hollywood scaling up and snaps. And then Juju, Juju is just kind of there. He's kind of 40% of the routes, 10% targets per route run. That is just where he's at. In terms of, who you want to use for fantasy, these prices on DraftKings feel crazy to me. We sort of have this mental image like, oh, the Chiefs they don't score any points. They're bad on offense. Why would I want to play them in fantasy? They have the third highest team total of the slate. As you mentioned, for all their faults, and there are a lot of them, they led the NFL in pass rate over expectation. They led the NFL in third down conversion rate. And I know the Texans defense is good, but Worthy is 5.2. Kelce is 5K. Hollywood's 4.2. Hopkins is 4.7. I mean, famous last words, but it certainly does feel to me that Mahomes doubles are very much back on the menu for this slate because they're all affordable.
I would go as far as to say Mahomes triples are on the menu because they're all cheap. It's only a 4-game slate. And like to me, I would almost rather the issue with the Chiefs, right, is there's a lot of viable guys, but it's really hard to pick the perfect combination of guys just because it really could be any of the 4. Plus, there's random dudes. I would almost be more tempted to say, like, if I'm going to play the Chiefs, instead of trying to pick the right Chiefs, I'll just play like 3 of his pass catchers, and I'm just gonna bet that they're the team that scores 35. Because if they do that, there might not be any other team that does. And that might be more how I play the Chiefs, is just get into them in some mega onslaughts in some of these like small to medium field tournaments.
Yeah. On the Texans side, the thing about Nico is, like, obviously he's a great play. No disrespect to the Kansas City or to the Los Angeles Chargers, but Spags is just like much better at handling good wide receivers. And this is who you have to play Nico Collins over. Puka Nacua, ever heard of him? Amon-Ra St. Brown, ever heard of him? AJ Brown. I mean, of the high-priced wide receivers, I think Nico might be my least favorite. Now, that is represented in ownership, but I don't know. I don't think I am all that interested really in playing Nico Collins or Mixon. Mixon is more attractive because he fulfills a running back slot, and they will give him the ball regardless of script. But I'm not that into playing Nico. I think even as like the stone chalk, I prefer Puka.
Yeah, I'm not going to play Joe Mixon at all. But I think the Texans are going to get the break speed off them in this game. And like Mixon will get volume and he'll catch a few checkdowns and stuff. I just like, I don't have any fear that Joe Mixon is going to bury me. I mean, famous last words, but like, I don't think that the Texans are going to have much success on offense in this game. So maybe
They didn't
Mixon
even have
catches.
much success on offense in the playoff game they won.
No, and Mixon wasn't doing anything until late in that game. And he still, I mean, he had a fine score, but he didn't have an essential one. And it was mostly based on like kind of the late game, salting the clock, yardage, and eventual touchdown. I don't think that that's going to be available to him in this spot. So maybe he has.
He could have scored twice. They called a second and 1 goal line, like CJ Stroud bootleg for absolutely no reason.
Right.
I mean, that was insane. So he could have had to, but yes.
I mean, in this game, to me, for Mixon to burn me, like I don't think he's going to have more than like 90 total yards. So like that's going to need to include 4 receptions, and then he's going to need to score once or twice early in the game. Because I just don't think that he's going to touch the ball much in the fourth quarter outside of maybe some checkdowns. So I don't know. No Mixon for me. Collins is interesting. I definitely give the Chiefs a lot of credit for their ability to shut down number 1 outside wide receivers like that.
And Jalen Watson is back now. He's got the same injury that like turned Tony Pollard and Mark Andrews and Tannehill into dust, and actually the same thing that Pacheco had that has really minimized his role. But I don't know. I assume playing corner. How much would the tightrope surgery? I don't know. But he is back. Yeah. So their best corner is back.
I'll play a little bit of him, and then the other guys that are of interest to me are maybe even of more interest to me is Mechie. Saw like 9 targets last week. He was really bad. Like he fumbled, and then he also had a drop. But they don't really have any other options. Like the only other option they could have had would have been Deontay Johnson, who they released. So like Mechie is the only other dude outside of Nico Collins, obviously, that has like any sort of dynamism. Like Robert Woods and Xavier Hutchinson are like kind of stiff dudes at this point. So to me, it was Mechie or Deontay for that one other role. And it's going to be clearly Mechie at this point. So I like him. 3.8, like big salary savings. It's going to be played a lot, but I think that's fine. And then Dalton Schultz, salary savings at tight end. Again, I think that they're going to lose this game by multiple scores. So if you think of like how teams pass when they're down by multiple scores, a lot of time that's like checkdowns to the tight end. That's what the defense will give you as they're trying to help you burn clock on these comeback drives. Like I could see Schultz racking up like 7 catches, 4 of which are in the fourth quarter pretty easily.
Can see that. I mean, the tight end, there are actually like a lot of good tight ends on this slate relative to their.
But the double
salaries.
Tight end is always in play.
Double tight end.
You're trying to play some of the studs.
Yeah. It's Kelce, Worthy, Hollywood for me. The guys I'm really heavily targeting, not as into Pacheco or Kareem Hunt. A much better fantasy game. The Washington Commanders with a 23-point team total travel to play at Detroit, a 32.5 team total in a playoff game. for Detroit. That's got to be the highest team total of the year. I think that is even higher than any of the ones that the Bills got to. David Montgomery, not listed on the injury report, full participant. Jahmyr Gibbs is $7,700. Jaden Daniels is $7K. Goff is 6.3. I mean, get this game right, and you will probably be winning all of the money on DraftKings.com. Jacob, how are you planning on getting this game right?
Man, I mean, I don't know that I have a way that's more inventive than what I think most people are doing. Like when I've looked at the ownership on this game, I think people generally have it right. People are super excited to play Jahmyr Gibbs. That's my favorite way to play this game in a vacuum. I think maybe the play that I like the most in this game, but it's a high risk one, is probably David Montgomery. He's been practicing in full all week, so I think there's a decent chance. I don't know. I would say it's like a 60% chance even that they're just going to kind of run their offense like they normally do, and that it's going to be roughly a 50-50 split between Gibbs and Montgomery. And if that's the case, like then Gibbs being over twice as owned at $2K higher salary is bad. Montgomery at that point becomes a massive value. And I really do want to attack Washington on the ground. I think that's generally how you want to approach them. So that's where I prefer to go, is maybe to Montgomery in the spot. I think it's also one of the only ways that you're, there's nowhere to hide from ownership on a 4-game slate. But if you're able
it's more
into
combinatorial
ownership.
Stuff. Yeah, you
exactly.
need to think more about combinatorial
and
stuff.
It's about also like what your ownership is doing to other lineups. So like if you like Montgomery is so directly negatively correlated to Gibbs, that if you play Montgomery and he hits in a way that Gibbs doesn't, and now that means that that's like literally half the lineups in your tournament have Jahmyr Gibbs and he goes for like 13. Like that Montgomery, even though he's going to be 20% owned, is doing a ton of work for you. So I think that he's just a play that makes sense if you can sort of trust in the roll stuff. But I'll probably need to like visit the Coach Speak Index a little bit more closely before figuring that out on the weekend. And then, similarly, again, I would think similarly to the Texans, I like Ertz in the spot, just based on kind of a team playing from behind. And, he had a really poor week last week, but better the week before. Those are probably the plays that stick out to me immediately. But I think every play in this game is good. Is there anyone you particularly like here?
Well, I mean, like obviously the thing with Jahmyr Gibbs is you have to place him in context of, do you like him more than Henry? Do you like him more than Barkley? The field is saying yes. That's probably a little bit of a leak, honestly, just because of the return of David Montgomery. He could be closer to 14 total touches, 16 total touches instead of 25, which is a meaningful difference. I think there are a couple angles here you can take if you want exposure to this high total game that the field will not be doing as much. Austin Eckler as one of your Commanders pieces is certainly one of them. B-Rob just looked brutal last week. Eckler, as expected, more involved in the passing game, running more routes, higher targets per route run. That's what you'd expect from Austin Eckler. And Olamide Zaccheaus instead of De'Ami Brown. After last week, De'Ami Brown will be the pivot. You go back to Olamide Zaccheaus. I don't think either of them are particularly good plays. And Jaden Daniels instead of Jared Goff. You just say, okay, well, the Lions score 5 touchdowns, but Jaden Daniels combines for 3 touchdowns, but gets one of the bonuses, adds 8 points with his legs or whatever. He can pretty easily outscore Jared Goff. If McLaurin is this low owned, if McLaurin is 16% owned and St. Brown's going to be 25% and J-Mo is going to be 20%, I think he also is a pretty obvious play. I think one of the better, he'll be one of the better sim plays of the slate if that ownership on him holds. And then, like I said, it's all relative at the wide receiver position. St. Brown, AJ Brown, Nico, Puka. I'd put St. Brown as my third favorite of that list, because I just think effectively nobody is playing AJ Brown this week. People, they do not want to be excellent inside. They're like, everyone's decided. All the Eagles do is run. They're boring. They're losers. And St. Brown, 32.5 point team, which is not to say, oh, don't play St. Brown. But I do think at their ownership, I expect AJ Brown to be like a better sim-based play.
I'd agree with that. And I agree with everything you're saying with the Daniel stuff. Daniel's probably my favorite quarterback on the slate, to be honest. Everything runs through him. Like I saw the stat, they had 12 yards on 12 carries on non-RPO runs. And so every other play was either a run off a Daniels fake, a Daniels keeper, or Daniels drop back. And the Lions, they're a little healthier than they were at the end of the regular season, but their defense is still pretty beat up. I think that they're still very beatable on that side of the ball. And they're going to score points in this game. So they're going to have to chase points all day. Yeah, I think if you play, and Gibbs is fine. I'm going to play probably a little bit more Monty just based on that take from the ownership perspective. But if you play one of Gibbs or Montgomery or any Lion, I guess, and then you bring that back with Daniels and McLaurin, and then one of those Ertz or Zacchaeus or Diami kind of secondary guys, I think that's a pretty strong stack.
This is also one of those where all the plays from this game probably get over-owned in single entry contests like the Spy versus the Millie or whatever, because they all do project so well. So like something I would like doing would be like, oh, I'll play Mahomes, Worthy, Kelce with St. Brown and Eckler, and then I can get into you're kind of playing the game actually like it sucks. If you play those guys, like if you don't play the quarterbacks, you're kind of playing it like this game is no good. A game.
I think you can play Lions pass catchers without Goff without any issue, just
for sure
the way that he accumulates points. But I think if you're playing, you can play a one-off Washington pass catcher, obviously without Daniels. But they ramped up his design rush rate so hard in week 1 that like if you want to really get into this game and you want to make this like a big part of your lineup, I'd probably think long and hard about why Daniels isn't a part of that, because I think so much of it on that side is going to flow through him.
All right, a game that at least Las Vegas expects to stink. The Los Angeles Rams traveling to play at Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia. 18.5-point team total for the Rams, 24.5-point team total for the Eagles. Look, if Barkley is actually going to be 30% and Gibbs is going to be 45%, I think I'm fine losing that. I think I'm fine saying I got Barkley in in the Spy on 200 less teams, than Gibbs is on. Obviously, Barkley, it's just true. Barkley has a lower floor than Jahmyr Gibbs because he gets no receptions, the tush push, all that stuff. But you want to talk about a guy who could just I think Barkley is much more likely to break the slate than Derrick Henry. Like much more. I think the Ravens might have some trouble running against the Bills. We'll get to that in a second. And AJ Brown, there's no chance he is 20% owned. None. That even on a 4-gamer, he just will not be that owned. He's expensive. He had 1 catch last week. He does not project particularly well. What do you make of this game?
It's the tough game. I mean, easily the worst game, I think, on the slate. We know what the Eagles want to do, right? They don't want to put the ball in Jalen Hurts' hands, which is pretty understandable. They want to run the shit out of the ball. They want to play a slow slog.
I think that's a little bit of a misnomer.
I don't.
I think that what they want to do is they just want to suffocate the life out of every game and allow the defense to be the driver. They have the best defense in the NFL, 4.7 yards per play. I think the preponderance of evidence of Jalen Hurts' career for the Philadelphia Eagles is that they don't necessarily, they build the offense in a way that he can execute it, and asking him to throw the ball 42 times. But that's not the same thing as saying they don't want to put the ball in his hands. I don't think it's the same.
Well, they want to put the ball in his hands to run it. I just don't think they want him to throw it very often. Yeah,
that's fine.
I mean, he's good. I'm not knocking his rushing ability. I don't know. I think Hurts is by a lot the worst quarterback left in the playoffs.
I think
one
that
of the worst quarterbacks in the National Football League. But everything else on this team is fantastic. The last part's hyperbolic. The first part I think is very true in terms of him relative to the other quarterbacks in this tournament. It's like I think he's a ways below, but this team rocks, and Hurts is he's a great running quarterback, great running the RPOs, and he can pass off of that. So, but it's just, yeah, it's tough for fantasy. Like, I don't like AJ Brown has a great ceiling if they get behind for sure. I just don't know that I actually.
He also has a great ceiling. He is compare him to Jamison Williams. He also can score 22.4 DraftKings points on 4 targets.
For sure. I don't know. I think it comes down to like, do I think that the Rams offense can have success in this game? Is because I think that for you to want to play any Eagle that's not Barkley or Hurts, I guess you can play Hurts and assume that he gets the rushing touchdowns. To play Smith or Brown or Goddard, you probably require some degree of Rams offensive success, and I'm not sure that they're going to have much. I mean, this Eagles defense has proven that they're pretty legit. The Rams offense is basically just one guy who adds anything. It's just Puka. Like, Kupp is toast. Kyron's a totally fine running back, but like not that explosive. I don't think he's going to have that much success against the Eagles. And I just think that Vic Fangio, with all the weapons at his disposal, is going to figure out a plan to not be like completely torn apart by Puka. Like, Puka's going to get there. He's going to have his volume. He's going to have a fine day. I just mean from like a real life perspective, are they going to let this one legitimate weapon completely torpedo their afternoon?
The exciting whites, dude. The exciting whites have been talking about one guy in their meeting all week long, you know?
Right. So I don't know. I think that the Eagles are gonna kind of grind this out. And I'm probably gonna mostly fade this game. It's, when you get these 4-game slates, like every game winds up being owned because people are uncomfortable making these mega stacks. There's nowhere to hide. And like, if this game just sucks and I have nobody in it, I think that you're still going to actually have, even if it's the least owned game, there's still going to be enough ownership on it that you're picking up stuff on the field. The one play that I actually like, ironically, because of everything I just said, is Jalen Hurts. I don't respect him as a real life quarterback, but I do respect him as a fantasy quarterback. His fantasy range of outcomes is not that dissimilar to Daniels, Allen, Lamar.
It's better.
By far the
better
least
than Daniels is
of these 4 guys. And he still has a very fantasy friendly role. He still has a great role at the goal line. He's still going to run the ball a bunch of times, and there's outs to him having to pass the ball more than he probably plans to. So I think that him, because he looked bad last week, and a lot of people think he's bad, he's going to be ranked behind those other 3, but could easily outscore them all.
I like Hurts more than the field. I like Brown more than the field. I like Devonta Smith more than the field. I like Dallas Goedert more than the field. Goddard in particular, 3,900. I think, again, these are very early ownerships that the viewers are seeing on the screen. Dallas Goedert is going to end up being less owned than Tyler Higbee. Once Higbee gets a practice in, dude, he had 5 catches in the first quarter last week. Cooper Kupp's done, dude. It's Tyler Higbee season. That's all coming. That is very much going to happen. I'll probably play 0 Kyron on my hand-built lineups. Just I would, if I was playing a running back dog, I'd rather play Mixon, I think. I might rather play Ty Johnson or Justice Hill, really, than Kyron here. Devonta at 5.6, pretty appealing to me. I mean, look, I will probably do one more Cooper Kupp experience. I know he's toast. I know he's toast. He is toast. It's super over, but $5,400 Cooper Kupp back against the wall, 40 pass attempts from Stafford.
Can't play, dog. He can't play.
Sure. Well, let's say Higbee projects to be 15% owned based off the usage that we saw from him last week. Are you interested?
I think that was a very specific. I think that was a very specific like Minnesota thing where when they do these crazy blitzes, they always leave the short, intermediate, middle of the field open. I think McVay recognized that and was abusing that very early in the game as part of the game plan. I don't think that carries over to other teams necessarily. I don't know. I don't know if I would play a Rams pass catcher other than Puka. Unless, I mean, the thing we're staring at has Tyler Higbee at 1% owned. I would definitely play him at 1% owned. I just don't think that's not going to ultimately be accurate. I'm not going to play DeMarcus Robinson. And yeah, like if Cooper Kupp was like 4K, sure. But like, I don't know. Does he even project better than John Mechie straight up?
By like a 1.5 points.
Okay.
Yeah, not much. Yeah, I think I mean it's looking like AJ Brown is going to be an early flag plant for me. Let's go to the legacy game. Basically, the Baltimore Ravens, 26.5-point team total. They are slight favorites at Buffalo with a 25-point team total. Josh Allen is 7.7. Lamar Jackson is 7.8. And whichever one of these guys loses this game, they are I would advise them to not check the internet for 6 to 8 months. Basically, it's honestly unfair that this is what's going to happen, but man, the sports talk radio was like built for this game. This is why sports talk radio still exists. I am concerned in terms of how this will work out for fantasy, that both teams will be so tight, particularly early on, that like Khalil Shakir, James Cook, Flowers, if he plays, he's not going to play. Bateman, Kincaid, likely all these guys. Like there might be 16 completed passes in the first half of this game or something. Like, I mean, we saw Buffalo do this against Denver. Buffalo was tight against Denver. 3 offensive possessions in the first half against the Denver Broncos. Just from like a really high level, what are you thinking about this game?
Well, I like Baltimore a lot in this game. I think they just frankly are better. Like if you just run through all the positions and if you assume that Josh and Lamar are roughly equal, then it adds up to Baltimore having a big advantage. And so I think that for Buffalo to win this game, like Josh has to be clearly and decisively the best quarterback on the field. And that's very possible. But I have faith in Lamar to sort of overcome some of his early playoff demons and at least play Josh to a draw. And the biggest issues I have with Buffalo is that the area that they've most atrophied in recent years is the linebacker and safety spots. They've just lost a lot of talent in those areas of their defense that hasn't fully been replaced. I don't think that they have all that much juice. And you look at how Baltimore plays, like, you're going to be facing zone read a million times in this game. And like, do you have the juice in your linebacker unit to have one guy come in and scrape on the zone read and the other guy replace him for the quarterback pull? And I don't know that they do. I don't think that they do. I think that they're going to get hammered on some big explosive runs. If you look at Buffalo's rush defense this year, they've actually been very good at limiting success rate on the ground. Because I think they have a very strong and stout front. But they can get lit up for explosives in the run game. And, there's no team that creates more explosive rushes than Baltimore with Henry and Lamar. And then you look at, again, like what Buffalo can do as a defense, they've thrived on doing is limiting explosive pass plays from outside wide receivers and funneling everything inside. And I think that Baltimore is going to be like, okay, cool. Like, I don't think they're going to have Flowers for this game. If they do, he's going to be very limited. They can run their passing offense out of 12 personnel through Andrews and Likely. I flag planted Likely last week, and he had a very strong first half, and they just didn't have to pass the ball at all in the second.
Yeah, he basically was Zay Flowers. He basically was Zay Flowers. I'm
definitely going to flag plant him a double flag plant again this week. I think he's a massive matchup problem for Buffalo. That they're going to be able to take advantage of in yak situations. I don't think that Buffalo can stop Baltimore at all. I think they're going to put up 1 million points in this game, and it comes down to whether Baltimore can stop Buffalo. I think they have a better chance, but I have a lot of respect for Josh Allen, of course. I think this game could be very, very fun. If Josh Allen comes to play and is able to match points, I think we could see a 60, 65-point showing in this one. What do you think?
I expect this game to I was going to say I expect it to go under, but it'll really just depend on how the coaches approach this, right? Todd Monken lost his mind, forgot how to call football in the AFC Conference Championship last year. These two teams have not faced each other in the playoffs, I believe. So I don't know.
They did maybe a long time ago.
These quarterbacks, though.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well,
maybe
these quarterbacks, Lamar and Josh played each other once.
Not in the playoffs.
Yeah, they did. It was the year that the first year, the year Buffalo lost to the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, and Diggs stayed and watched the celebration. They beat Baltimore in the second round that year.
17-3.
Yeah. Lamar
good.
played probably Lamar's worst playoff game. They were down 10-3 through a pick six at the goal line.
Tyler Huntley came in this game.
Yeah, he got hurt, but it was already 17-3 when he got hurt. They had him it was like 3rd and goal at the 5, and Lamar threw like a 100-yard pick six that turned the game. It was a bad game for Lamar.
Yeah, you don't want a repeat of this game. You really can't have a repeat of this game, which is my concern.
Like 6
is that
years ago though?
Well, my concern is just that both these head coaches prefer to be conservative. You kind of get the sense that both of them are like, I wish my quarterback was a little bit less exciting. There's this viral clip going around right now where Harbaugh on the Justice Hill touchdown at the end of the half last week is saying, he's yelling, throw it away, throw it away, throw it away. Yeah. And then Lamar throws a touchdown pass. I think probably the correct ways to play this game are through the quarterbacks who look a little bit underowned to me, and then through the secondary pass catchers. So Andrews, Likely, Dalton Kincaid, Keon Coleman, Amari Cooper. I don't think playing a 33% owned Khalil Shakir feels all that good. Now, Flowers is not going to play, and all that ownership is going to filter to Bateman. If Likely is less owned than Andrews, I mean, that's probably the best play of the slate. So I'll be doing that. And then I think you can get away with Justice Hill too. By the way, if you're playing this like it's kind of a back and forth affair. I mean, Justice Hill and Derrick Henry are just in a 50-50 timeshare. It's just that Henry's so efficient, but Justice Hill is clearly the passing down back.
Yeah, they're in a 50-50 snaps timeshare. They're not in a 50-50 touches timeshare. But yes, Justice Hill has a very real role. And he has a role, in the 2-minute drill, comeback mode, 3rd downs. Like he can score for sure. And he can have explosive plays. And he's lit up the Bills this season.
He scored 2 touchdowns.
But he was a big matchup piece for them. I mean, the Bills all year have struggled massively against pass catching running backs. I went through in one of my columns this year, all the running backs went for 5 and 50 or more against them. It was like Achane did it twice in the receiving game. Justice Hill did it with a touchdown. Daria Gumbawale did it. Like these receiving style running backs have lit up the Bills all year. Jahmyr Gibbs. So yeah, I think Justice Hill, especially in a small field contest, if you want to play Puka and Amon-Ra or Puka and AJ, like get multiple of these top wide receivers into your lineup and maybe spend up a tight end, Justice Hill at running back is a great way to do that. And we've just talked about, like, it's very easy to see how Mixon can crap out. Very easy to see how Kyron can crap out. The Chiefs don't run the ball at all. And, Justice Hill, to some extent, is a direct leverage off of Henry. So if you just choose kind of one of Gibbs and Barkley and then Justice Hill, you can see how that lineup gets there. I like him a lot.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. If you were to play a secondary Bill, so not James Cook, not Khalil Shakir, who would it be?
Sorry?
If you were going to play a secondary Bill, so not Shakir, not James Cook, which one would it be?
Okay. So no Cook, no Shakir. Probably Keon Coleman. Just because of like the route tree he runs, he can get there on 2 catches.
And get there on 2. Yeah, that is my feeling. That's my feeling as well. I mean, I'll probably burn, $50 on a Kincaid lineup again. I mean, he played fewer snaps than the 6th tackle last week. He's basically Noah Gray. Dalton Kincaid is basically Noah Gray on the Bills. So it's not great. The targets per out run are pretty good though. Targets per out run for Mr. Rube Goldberg machine, Dalton Kincaid are pretty live. All right, man. Let's build a lineup. Let's do some gold star plays, and we can be on our way. And I will let you make the first pick.
All right. I will select Mr. David Montgomery.
I think that's pretty strong. I think Montgomery, assuming he really is healthy, he should be one of the more chalk plays on the slate. But I feel like from a projection, it's hard for Cardi or the ETR guys to be like, yeah, it's just David Montgomery, 15 points. It's just a hard leap to make.
Totally.
I will do what I think is the easiest play of the slate, Travis Kelce. $5,000 Travis Kelce in the playoffs. I mean, just $5,000 is cheap for the role he had this year anyway, not to account for the expected bump I think we're going to see from him in the playoffs.
For sure. On the Montgomery point, like you just mentioned about projections, I think this is a key thing. It's like the projections have to take into account all possible outcomes and then aggregate them. But
Yep.
like that's not actually how real life works. Like we're not going to see an aggregated outcome. We're going to see one specific outcome. And so none of us really know what's going on exactly with David Montgomery's health or how Dan Campbell is going to choose to alter his running back rotation, if at all, based on his health. So it's, to me, it's like kind of binary. Like there is a large chunk of the range of outcomes, which is Dave Montgomery's fully healthy and they do the running back rotation like they've done it all year long. And then there's another chunk, which is Dave Montgomery is not fully healthy, or they've been so impressed by Gibbs or whatever that they choose to use him as a more clear 1B to 2 instead, and Gibbs is the 1A. And I don't know which of that is going to be. It's just based on the pricing and the ownership. It looks like the market is pretty clearly taking the side of this is going to be fundamentally different than what we've seen all season because of that injury. And it might be, but if it's not, it's probably not going to be like slightly off. It's just that there's a world where that all of those things that have been aggregated are just wrong, and we're just getting the full season workload. In which case, if you make that assumption, then the pricing is going to be way, way off. I'll do Jaden Daniels, the quarterback position here.
All right. I like that. I mean, I think he probably, weirdly, I wonder if Jaden Daniels actually gets a little bit underowned because people just find a way to get to Allen or Lamar, who do project better from a raw perspective. It's so funny. We didn't even mention Stroud or Stafford. It's like, I guess you can play those guys. I'm not a huge fan of it, but you certainly can. All right. We need a second running back. Let's see if we can make Barkley work. Let's take Barkley. We have $4,820 for 3 wide receivers, a flex, and a defense per slot. Let's see if we can make this work.
All right. I think that we can because Jaden has some pretty cheap pass catching options. But I'll take just the regular Terry McLaurin first, and then we can deal with the salary savers later.
All right. Let's do McLaurin. Terry, welcome to the lineup. Well, let's take Mechie. Let's save some salary.
All right.
And let's take Mechie at 3,800. And what's the good cheap defense? None of them really. Well, let's take the Ravens, I guess, right? Ravens are probably the best. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I will do I will do Alameda. Actually, I don't know if I want to pick on Mr. Branch in the slot. I'll take De'Ami Brown.
Mr. Dynamic Brown. All right, so we have 7,200, so we're actually going to be able to fit him
rolling in cash.
Yeah, we're going to be able to fit him very easy, and it might actually make more sense. So it's either St. Brown in the flex, or we could spend up. Actually, why don't we do this? I'll change my Mechie pick to likely, and we have 7,500 at wide receiver.
We can do Puka.
We can do Puka. So there we go. We've got Daniels, Montgomery, Barkley, McLaurin, Puka, De'Ami Brown, Travis Kelce, Isaiah Likely, and the Ravens defense. That is much better. That is a perfectly cromulent DraftKings team for this slate. And now we got to do some gold star plays. Jacob, who is your gold star play?
Yeah, maybe I'm dumpster diving too much today, but I got the two. Talked about them both already. Dave Montgomery play for all the reasons that I've already laid out. I think has a big matchup advantage. I think it's a spot where we might just find out that as much as we would like Dave Montgomery to go away, Dan Campbell does not share our persuasion. And then the other one is Isaiah Likely. I'm doing the double gold star play. We got game scripted out of it last week. I think that the Bills are going to keep pace a lot better than the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that he is going to continue to take on some of the Zay Flowers stuff as a yards after catch player, especially in a matchup that has been susceptible to short area, middle of the field type targets. So I like Likely a lot.
I like likely a good bit as well. Maybe this just says something about the slate. Maybe this says something about us. My gold star play is going to be Travis Kelce. I think that the
Nice.
narrative that he stinks and is dead and is washed, I mean, it got a little bit overplayed in the regular season anyway. Like, he still had a 25% target share, still ran 87% of the routes, still had a 23% targets per route run. You know, his utilization score was awesome. Like, he is just a good fantasy tight end anyway, not accounting for the fact that his usage the last 2 years has scaled up big time in the playoffs. 21 days of rest for his 31-year-old knees, 34-year-old knees. He looks like, to me at 5,000, I think he's basically just the best play of the slate, and I don't think he'll get played that way at all. I think he'll like mostly get paired with Mahomes. I don't think there'll be like a ton of like Lamar, Kelce, Josh Kelce, Daniels Kelce. I'm not saying don't play him with Mahomes, but I think you just use him like a guy who a $5,000 wide receiver who projects really well. Travis Kelce, gold star play. Jacob, what can people look out for as you take your vacation and then get back to the dynasty streets and thinking about thinking?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, not a ton in the. I'm going to get the dynasty ranks updated because I know people are already doing startups. So I'm going to have a dynasty ranks update this week. And then it's going to take a little pause for the cause, focus on the law, get into the prospect lab. And then when I return to content, probably mid-Feb, we'll have I already have some ideas, this sort of market-based theory, dynasty stuff I want to do. Plus, we're going to have all of the 2025 NFL rookie draft coverage. Of course, we're going to have some stuff up ready for the sickos who do the pre-draft stuff. We'll obviously have a ton up like we always do for the post-rookie draft stuff. And super excited for that. Easily my favorite part of the season.
I'm cranking out some prospect profiles over on the Patreon. So if you are really fiending for some dynasty content over the next month, I've got some of that there. Make sure you're signed up for Thinking About Thinking. And we'll be back next year, Jacob. We'll be back. Next time you see Jacob and I, we'll be doing some dynasty content. So look forward to that. Good luck in the divisional round, everyone. See you soon. It's Short King Summer, dude. It just feels like no one in fantasy sports ever learns anything. Does he mistime it, or is Brock Bowers just a grown man? Brock Bowers is just a grown man. Dare I say, Rich, football might be back. In the words of Lane Johnson, this offense looks constipated. It's